Hello and welcome back to the Georgia's Live podcast, the official podcast of Georgia's Majestic Lounge in Fayetteville, Arkansas. You can go online to georgiaslive.com for shows and ticket information as well as purchasing tickets. Be sure to follow us on social media such as Facebook at facebook.com/Georgia's Majestic Lounge, on Instagram at Georgia's Majestic Lounge, on Twitter at Georgia's Majestic, and be sure to rate, subscribe, and review the podcast. Let us know what you think. And today on the show, we have Adams and Ethan from the band Arkansauce on the podcast. We got to talk about their show coming up at Georgia's, their tour in Europe, their new album release, and their new beer that they just now released alongside the Ozark Brewing Company. And we had a good little chat, and let's go ahead and take you straight there. I'd like to thank the guys in Arkansas for coming on the Georgia's Live podcast, and thank you guys for listening. All right, I am here with the Arkansauce boys. What's up, guys? How y'all doing?
Good, man. How are you?
Doing well. Thank you guys for coming on the podcast. You guys have been busy.
Yes.
You stay that way, it seems.
It's been a real big year last year, and I guess the previous years, I don't even know anymore how long it's been, but it's, we're in it.
Nice.
In the middle of it.
And I wanted to have you guys on to talk about your new album, your show coming up here at Georgia's, and your tour coming up overseas. Mm-hmm. And let's go ahead and just dive right into it. There's also another little beer news as well. Let's kind of get started with talking about your show coming up this Friday at Georgia's here. And you guys are playing this Friday night, the 6th.
That's correct. Yep. We're doing an album release this Friday here at Georgia's. We've got a couple of bands playing with us. A band out of Minneapolis called Pert Near Sandstone that we've kind of heard about for a while and crossed paths with them this summer out at Floyd Fest.
Nice. We
kind of had a set right before them and got to rub elbows with them a little bit, and then ended up doing some parking lot picking. And in the string band world, there's a lot of community and brotherhood, and we had a pretty good connection with some of those guys, and so we were excited to invite them down to come play with us. And then also we got Grass Fed, which is out of either St. Louis or Kansas City. I have a hard time knowing because those guys I feel like are on the road all the time, so it almost seems like they don't have a home.
Yeah, I've worked with them several times, and I'm kind of like you when I work with the band. To me, everybody's from here. If you've played here 5 or 6 times, right. You're kind of all local. And it's an album release as well, right?
Yep. Yeah, we've got our 4th studio album that we just put up for streaming online on Thanksgiving Day. And so that'll be the official album release party. But it's been a long time coming. The first 3 albums, I think, came out yearly in succession, but now it's been 2 years since the last one.
Is this the longest break since you started releasing albums that you guys have had between?
Definitely, yeah. And I think there wasn't really a plan. We never really schedule albums. It's like whenever the material seems to start to lean more towards 10 songs than 5, then we start to think about it. But it's always been like some of the songs we've already have been road tested for a year, and some of them we're finishing up a couple of weeks before we go into the studio. That seems to always be the case.
So it's kind of like a mixture of what you guys have played live and kind of digging, and then what you're feeling. Do you ever record anything before you play it live?
Yeah, there's a couple tunes on the album that I don't think we maybe played them live once last week or something, but we've been kind of holding them back and sitting on them. We have this. We always talk about trying to save songs and then not really playing them before the album comes out on every album that we've done. But we always get too excited and just excited to play new music all the time. And so most of the album's been road tested pretty heavy, but there's a couple tunes in there that are still pretty fresh to the live show.
Does everyone kind of write and bring stuff to the table?
Yeah, we do. Everyone kind of seems to write on their own, their own full songs lyrically, and they bring it to the group. And sometimes they don't even fly. Over the years, I've had a couple I was really excited about, and I play mandolin, but a lot of times I write on guitar when I've got one handy. And when I'm playing that song alone on guitar, I'm like, man, this is going to be a slayer. Everyone's going to love this. And then I'll bring it to the table, and you can just tell in the room that it's not popping and everyone's not getting off on it like you are, you know?
Yeah.
But when someone brings a song like that and everyone immediately likes it, or they're willing to push it hard enough, even if they don't, then usually the full band influence comes more on the arrangements. You know, Adams has a lot more experience arranging than I do, for instance. And a lot of times I'll bring a song in knowing that I'm going to need that to kick it, you know, to kick it over the line of being exciting, or even time-wise, you know, for the stage.
That's cool that you guys respect each other's place and what you bring, so you can kind of activate those strengths.
Well, it's a wrestling match for sure. There's a lot of throwdowns and you know, a lot of like leaving rehearsal in a huff and then realizing that the other person was right and coming back and be like, all right, yeah, I think that part actually is better.
Do you ever find yourself kind of with a little spark and bringing in like a little nugget, and then other people throwing in more stuff on it and kind of blossoming it into anything? You ever find yourself doing that?
That happens a lot on. So we have a lot of semi improvisational parts in the show, in between songs, you know, segues. And I would say it happens a lot in that department. You know, someone will have an idea, because there's a lot of crossover between the string band scene and the jam band scene, especially in the fan base, and a lot of times that's the kind of stuff they want to see. You know, they want to see that creativity. And I think what's interesting is Zach and I often have the desire for that the most, but the least amount of ability to put it together. So I don't know if Adams might not agree with me on this, but there was a long time where I felt like Adams really didn't want to do that, specifically didn't want to do that. And I feel like we've grinded him down over the last 3 or 4 years to now he really jumps into that stuff and helps us get out what we're picturing. So in that sense, yeah, I bring in like a little nugget of, I just know I want to get from this song to this song, and they end in the same key or near enough the same key that we can make it work. Adams, what do you think about that? And then
give him the wink.
Like, really hope that he's willing to help me put that together, you know?
Yeah, my approach to that kind of stuff is I do like it if it's done well. You know, I think my aversion to it in the past has been, you know, in young bands or different jam sessions, when you kind of get into groups of people that aren't as well rehearsed, it kind of just turns into a noodle fest, you know, and the long solos and there's no,
kind of like people jumping in to jam for the sake of jamming, as opposed to,
yeah, and what I hear most of the time is people listening to them, like, you know, 4 or 6 dudes all listening to themselves, you know, trying to play hot licks or look cool on stage or something, and you know, it just seems like it creates this environment that never moves in any direction. And
what pointers would you have for like facilitating a good jam? Obviously listening to other people.
Yeah. With Arkansauce, what made it a lot more exciting for me was this band has spent more time playing together, exponentially more than any band I've ever played in, and you know, there's no substitute for time spent playing together. And it's just, I feel like we rehearse twice a week for a few hours, and then we usually are gigging 2 or 3 days a week with longer tours mixed in. And on tour, we're sitting around noodling together, passing around ideas, and you just learning what other people's tendencies are, you know, learning their musical personality and knowing you're playing well enough. But yeah, it's all about listening for sure. And I equate music to conversation all the time, and think about what, you know, am I a person that's speaking? Am I a person that's responding? Am I a person that's just looking and nodding? You know, I especially with the 4-piece string band that doesn't have a drummer, you know, I feel like every role is really important in fleshing out a full, complete ensemble sound. You know, there's everybody kind of gets responsibility for being a drummer in different ways, and really listening to the group as a whole and figuring out what part is not being played and playing that part instead of, I don't know, I try not to match other people's parts, or I try and find. I'm always looking for complementary parts and stuff that helps push
texture
it forward.
to it.
And sometimes it's too about recognizing your own or your instrument's own strength too. Sometimes it's like I'm trying to do something that I feel like my hands are capable of, but for some reason it's just not hitting, and then it hits me all of a sudden that that's definitely something the guitar needs to be doing, or the banjo needs to be doing, or the bass, and I'm just kind of swinging in the wind trying to do it with my really high register mandolin, and on the other hand, the mandolin's got a much more punchier rhythmic chop than, like, say the guitar or the bass does. So I think, just recognizing what your instrument brings to the table in those situations too can help you find your spot to fit in a little better,
What's your recording process like? Where'd you guys record at?
We recorded up at Haxton Road in Bentonville. We've been getting a lot of good reports of their gear and their people. And
it's a great space.
Yeah, it's beautiful, and those guys are pro, top notch. It was a little tough. They like to start early and finish early, which is not the schedule that we're
like
on.
Daytime hours and stuff like that.
Yeah, and especially it being in Bentonville, and especially string band is such an athletic experience that I was having to get up at like 7 so I could eat and then warm up and then drive 45 minutes up there and be ready to go in the studio, by like, I don't know, 8, 9, or I can't remember.
Hand cramp city. Yeah,
it felt like it was the middle of the night when we'd show up there, whereas before some of the other places we'd start more like 11 or noon. So that was
that was a challenging part.
That is. A lot of times through the night.
Yeah.
Right.
Especially if you're a rapper.
Right.
You only go in like at 1 a.m. after the club.
Yeah.
So, nice hat.
Thanks, I appreciate it.
Let's talk about your guys' beer with your partnership with Ozark.
Yeah, let's do it.
Kind of talk about that.
We had it. You could say that it began a long time ago. I don't even know what the catalyst to this situation was, but when we were a very young band with even a different lineup at this point, we went to up to the Ozark's first brewery. They're in a different building now.
Oh yeah.
And shot a video up there. I think they were just kind of looking for some content.
It was actually for Roots Fest.
Oh, was it?
The first year we played Roots Fest, they do little promo videos.
So we went and set up shop in the brewery and just played 1 or 2 tunes, and they picked one, and we got to know Marty. Then I don't know Marty's last name.
Shutter.
That's right. It's too cool. Every time I hear it, I think it's like a stage name or something. It sounds so cool. And
that's the most rocking. Yeah, it is.
It's pretty cool. And he's into photography and stuff too. That's why I think.
Oh wow, nice.
But he, and then anyway, so that was almost 5 years ago. That was probably 4 years ago. And then we have now one of their reps, Travis. What's Travis's last name?
Lorton. I'm the last name guy. I got them all.
Yeah, see, you got, what a.
He used to bartend down the street from a spot I was bartending at, and we became friends that way, I believe, first. But have stayed that way, and I think most recently it was his idea to try to push some collaboration again. So he just set up a meeting with some of the owners and himself and us, and we went to the new brewery and checked it out. And they're just really into they're really into music themselves. I know a lot of them are into string music specifically. And at first it was like they were even just trying to find a way to throw us some product and then us rock some hats and shirts. But when we got to talking, it felt like there was more there, and we had the album, the new album coming out. So then it turned into, well, let's make another video, at least with one of the new album songs. And then it turned into, well, what if we, what if it was a beer for not necessarily the band, it's not an Arkansauce beer. It's more like maybe someday the album beer, and it's specifically. They came up with a pale ale that we called Diamonds and Gold Pale Ale. It's named after one of the more laid-back songs on the album. And they called us for some tasting notes over the next few weeks, and then we got to go up there on a day and actually help with the brewing process under close supervision, of course. We weren't calling the shots, obviously. But it was really fun, yeah. And the beer is finalized now. We've had to have a couple pints, and it's going to be on draft.
It'll be on draft here at the show.
Yeah, here at George's, which will be really fun. That's going to be really full circle feeling for us.
I think it was a good fit. You know, Ozark is an incredibly here's the tap handle for the folks.
Yeah.
And it's you know, Ozark's such a solid beer company since, you know, they started making beer. It's been, you know, it's everywhere.
Right, yeah.
And when I think of you guys are when I think of Northwest Arkansas, you guys are like when you guys are out on the road, you're like championing everybody here.
Sweet.
Yeah, thanks,
Because
man.
you guys, I see you at shows, you know, that around town that's going on when you're back in town, you are local kind of heroes on the road. So having you guys kind of partner up with this beer, it made like perfect sense. It seems to be like a perfect alignment.
Yeah.
Yeah, we talked about that, you know, in our first meeting, you know, like the mutual admiration, you know, even though it's completely different genres, but just more of the promotion of lifestyle for Northwest Arkansas and, you know, trying to be a local business that's integrated in the community and participating in the community. It felt like a good fit.
Mm-hmm. And the beer's good too,
I like it.
as they all are.
Yeah.
It is good, yeah. I've already had to get an Uber home once over those beers.
Pumping it right through back to the source.
Yeah.
So let's talk about your guys' tour that you have coming overseas to Europe. How many shows you guys doing over there?
Yeah, so we'll be returning to Europe for we went last year in January, and we did 2 weeks, 14 straight days, which was surprisingly manageable. We had a driver and a place to stay, which made a big difference, and we just had a really good time. It felt kind of like more like cultural ambassadors, you know. I feel like here people really know how to respond to what we're doing, but there we got a lot of people, you know, stroking their chins and staring at us, and we'd be like, oh, they hate it, and then we get done and they'd be just, you know, stoked about it.
We had Lettuce on the podcast, and that's what he talked about is, you know, talking about how when they went over there and played, they were kind of real quiet and kind of watching the same way. That's what I've always heard. They kind of take in that particular art form a little bit differently, it seems. Pay a little bit more attention.
Yeah, there was one night where it hit me. It was probably the fourth or fifth night, because the first few nights I was a little uncomfortable with it. I was like literally dreading making stage banter in between songs. I was like, I wish this song would last forever and I didn't have to make some joke that I can't tell if it's landing or not, you know. But then there was a specific show in Bamberg, Germany at this it was like one of the first nicer rooms we had played. And I noticed that there were a lot of couples that came out that were like dressed up and got a table near the stage and had like one or two really nice cocktails. And all of a sudden it hit me that they were like out for their date and a show, you know, and were enjoying it the same way they would, you know, if they were at the movies or whatever. Like they were completely engaged. They were applauding after every song, but they were very contemplative during the performance, you know.
They planned their evening around your music.
Right, yeah.
You know?
And that made me feel uniquely proud of the music, different than I feel in most rowdy bars, you know. And from then on, I had a really good feeling about it and enjoyed it a lot more. I think it's what you were saying a minute ago. They just kind of receive it a little differently.
Do you, whenever you guys are touring and you're playing, and you're playing a big show and there's a lot of people there and they're digging it, do you find yourself kind of checking yourself and making a mental checkpoint of all the hard work you've put in to kind of get to such a cool spot to be doing such a cool thing? Or does it?
I don't know if that ever hits me
not on
stage,
but like off stage, just kind of, you know, you're getting like messages from fans and stuff like that, kind of supporting what you're doing.
It definitely hits me off stage, and you can see it sometimes when you're on big or little shows talking to other local musicians that are from that area, you know. And you're just describing what to you at the moment is a normal day in the life, and it doesn't seem like you might have even had a bad day that day coming from the hotel and then being in the van all day and being on stage. And then you're recounting it to them because they want to know, and you're seeing their eyes light up. And then
that's what they're trying to get to.
Yeah, and then it reminds you of feeling that same way. You're like, oh, yeah, actually it is pretty sweet. Now that I'm saying it out loud and frowning about it, I feel pretty silly.
I had a friend that I played with, and he was talking about a conversation he had with his wife, and she was like, so you guys just get in the car and you travel and you don't know how many people's going to be there and you don't know how much money you're going to make, and then you drive back through the he described it in a way where I was like, that actually sounds like a horrible idea to go do it.
It's totally ludicrous. Yeah, I think being so close to it too, I definitely take it for granted all the time, because there's two things. Like, I just get bogged down in the tedium, and then also I always feel like I'm like, what's the next thing we need to do? How are we going to continue growing? And it's like it's this endless journey that I'm always looking forward, and it would do me good probably to take some more time and just enjoy it.
Well, I think that's a human. I think everybody has that. Anybody that's hustling or trying, you're always looking, all right, what can I do next? I got this. What's the next thing I can do? I don't think really not a lot of people stop and really, unless you're like some kind of Zen master,
Right.
can stop and kind of look at everything from the outside in.
Yeah.
It's kind of hard to see yourself from the outside in when
It's
you're in
true.
it.
Yeah.
But yeah, thank God for Instagram, because that's the thing that every time Ethan manages our social media, and he actually had printed off a stack of some of the photos just to have physical copies. We were actually had some out for a video shoot we were doing, and I was just looking through them the other day, and it was a culmination of like the last year or two. But every picture I was like, dang, that was cool.
Go back and look at ones from like 10 years ago, and you'll almost cry, because you're like, those are the days. Just it brings up so many memories and stuff like that. That's what I do like about social media, is having it. Obviously, personally, it's a pain, but for a business wise, you got to have it. But it's a cool thing that when you keep posting it, and then you can go back and look and kind of relive like old moments and stuff like that, and kind of a reminder of what got you to where you're at type scenario.
Yeah, it is pretty sweet.
So when you guys are on the road, how do y'all pass the time? Y'all listen to podcasts, read books, watch movies, or?
It depends on who's in the driver's seat mainly, but all of those things. Yeah, we always start. Usually when we leave for a tour, when we first hit the road, there's like some ripping bluegrass playing, and we'll listen to a few albums. And then we get weary of that, and someone plays funk for a while. And then it just kind of slowly digresses throughout the day until we're just like at a podcast at like 5 p.m. and then at 8 p.m. it's like The Office or some television show on the TV that everyone's watching, except the driver, of course. But we've definitely burned.
I usually get a good nap in when I'm driving. Hit the bumps.
Yeah.
We've definitely burned a few hours just watching TV in the van. Because part of it is, it's like you're about to go play a bunch of string music. You don't want to listen to it blaring in your ears for 10 hours beforehand, So, and then sometimes there's also been drives where we ride in silence forever.
Yeah.
And everyone's got their headphones in just to get their own space,
Yeah, we travel in a Sprinter van, which is pretty comfortable. It's got a lot of room, and really, for the past several months, this past year, really, once I realized I could practice in the van, I stuff my banjo with a bunch of dirty clothes or whatever, and can sit in the back and kind of go through all my technical exercises. I don't feel like I get a lot of creative practicing done, but just physical practice has saved my sanity of feeling like I'm not just wasting my life sitting in a seat staring out a window. And everybody really, with the exception of Tom, on the upright bass, it's not as conducive to van practice. But everybody, gets some time in. Ethan and I have sat in the back together and worked up some stuff, and it kind of helps offset the stagnation of tour life.
That's one thing I'm kind of envious. Being a drummer, obviously, I've never just done like a pop-up jam without having to go make a ordeal of it.
Yeah.
But, I've always been kind of envious of, my friends that do play stringed instruments. They can kind of just jam anywhere. You were talking about kind of the parking lot jams. Is that something that kind of pops up a lot when you're playing with other bands, that you guys kind of jump together and kind of jam on some stuff if you see like-minded folks or anything like that?
Right, yeah. I mean, that almost always happens at festivals if you're into it, You pull out your instrument at a bluegrass festival and lean up against your car and start playing it. You don't have to wait long before someone will join you.
Yeah.
And the same thing with green rooms at shows. That's another fun thing. I don't think there's lots of different genres where there can be an act ripping it on stage, and the green room 20 feet behind them can be full of musicians playing too,
that's
and
awesome.
not really interfering with each other, which is awesome. And it's not so rare either that it happens at after parties, after shows. Even when we're in other towns, there's just there's a lot of people that.
Do you find like ripping players on the road sometimes that just destroy.
Totally.
Yeah. It can be pretty humbling too, especially after you saw them in your crowd that night and you felt like a super big shot. And then they busted out later and they're smoking you.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's one jam that stands out in my mind. At Adams, I don't think you were there because you had to fly out after that. What's
Easter Island?
Easter Island thing, yeah. We had a jam, me and Tom. Tom was playing guitar with another guitar player and another banjo player at this camp. That one of our friends from here drug us to this camp, like, hey, I know these guys, y'all come pick over here. And we played for a long time, and what sticks out about it is that guy that was the other guy that was on guitar besides Tom still sends me Facebook messages here and there, like, man, that was so fun, like specifically about that night. And this was years ago. And I still run into people all the time at different shows that were just in that camp hanging out, you know, not part of the jam themselves, but that are still so grateful, you know, every time they see me. And they have to remind me every time what they're talking about. But that kind of stuff makes you feel really good about the community of bluegrass music.
Yeah, absolutely.
And how easy it is to pick up and jam with other people.
Seems like it's pretty connected. Everywhere you go, you're still kind of connected through that genre. You know? It kind of brings people together a little bit more than a lot of other genres, it seems.
Yeah, and the genre doesn't breed too many toxic egos either. It's like you run into even the biggest heroes of yours, and they're super down to earth. You know, we've been lucky enough to meet some really big dogs the last few years: David Grisman, Sam Bush, Del McCurry, people like that, and they never. Unless they're walking on the stage at that moment, they don't ever ignore you or anything like that. You know, they're interested to talk about whatever you want to talk about. They don't care. You know, they're laid back. So that's
people.
Cool. Yeah.
Yeah. So where can people go online to find your guys' music? Where would you send them?
Apple Music is what I use. It's on Spotify. It's on YouTube. Those are the only three that I've ever used. So I
think
sure
it's on Amazon as well and iTunes.
Yeah. But we have if people are looking to get physical copies, we have a website, arkansaucemusic.com, where we have all of our merch. We got a fresh run of merch for this season and some album-specific stuff in addition to, you can pre-order the album, and we'll have vinyls. We're getting vinyls pressed this time.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, so all that stuff is available for mail order.
The vinyl countdown.
Yes.
Well, cool. Thank you guys for coming on. And
yeah, man,
it's been awesome. Good
luck on
thanks
the
for
show
having this weekend and with the tour and everything. Appreciate it.
Yeah. Thanks, Travis.
Thank you. There you go, guys. That was Ethan and Adams from the band Arkansauce. I'd like to thank them for coming on the podcast. Be sure to go get some tickets for their show this weekend, as well as check their music out online. And if you want to see what other shows are coming up at Georgia's Majestic Lounge, as well as purchase tickets for them, you can go to georgiaslive.com. And on social media, be sure to follow us at facebook.com/Georgia's Majestic Lounge, on Instagram at Georgia's Majestic Lounge, on Twitter at Georgia's Majestic. And as usual, be sure to rate, review, and subscribe to the podcast. It really helps us out a lot and lets us know what you guys think and helps us point us in a direction of pumping out some more cool podcasts for you guys. So thank you all for listening, and we'll see you next time.